So we were talking a little bit before we started recording about the last time we all saw this movie. Essentially, was like in the theater. I think was the general consensus, right?
Yeah,
Did we
pretty
all
much.
see it in the theater?
Not for
Or?
me.
Oh,
I
okay.
did watch it in theaters. It was actually one of my first horror movies.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Because, like, obviously growing up, you hear so much about the original It, because it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like this movie
Right.
made people afraid of clowns so much. And just kind of like, I'd seen clips of Tim Curry's performance, and it was always like really interesting to me.
Mhm.
But I never watched it. And so when there was a remake happening, I was like, I kind of want this. Looks interesting. It looks like a fun time, and I want to give it a
Oh, yeah.
try. And so I did, and I saw it in theaters with a friend. And
I
I did
always
have a
wanted to
good
get into
time.
the original because I love Tim Curry. You know, Tim Curry is
Well, who
he's a
doesn't?
very, very fun man. But I had never seen the original. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to miss my chance to catch the new one. So I went by myself, if memory serves. Maybe I went with Jeff. I actually don't know.
You
To
did
see the
not go with
movie.
me. I went with someone else.
Okay, so I went by myself to go see this movie, and I'm like, yeah, this is a good movie. I had a blast. And then a friend of mine was like, wow, can't believe you went to go see that movie without me. Do you want to go see it again? Because you never hang out with me anymore. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go see it again. Yeah, Jeff, you know who I'm talking about now, don't you?
I think I do.
And, I'm not one to say no to going to see a movie that I enjoyed a second time. Spoiler alert, I did enjoy the movie. But I had this thing back then where I was working a lot. And because I was working a lot, I was tired all the time. So I went into this theater and I fell asleep and I slept through half the movie because I'd seen it the first time. I stayed awake the whole time, but the second time, and this happened at home at a friend's house, if I had seen the movie before, I fell asleep while we were watching it almost every single time. You know, it is
It
what it
happens.
is. Sometimes even new movies I couldn't stay awake, but this dude was so butthurt that I fell asleep while watching the movie, and he's just like, I mean, at least you could have done was stay awake while we were watching the movie. It's like, man,
Buddy.
I still came and saw the movie. I was still happy to be here. I just fell asleep in the
Like
middle.
anybody does that on purpose. Come on.
Yeah, I did
Right?
it to spite him.
Noah, you're really speed running being an old person. I just gotta say
I
that.
really
He
am.
really is.
See, I bounced
Yeah.
back and I became young again when I stopped working like 80-hour weeks.
Now
and I
hold
was
on,
able to
just
stay up.
I'm gonna let you finish whatever this bullshit statement is, but I want to make sure everybody knows when he says he bounced back and became young again, he has a bowl of goddamn Werthers by his front door.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
I love what? I love Werthers. Yeah, no, I keep.
I want to
keep
make
a
sure
bowl of-
nobody loses sight of the fact that Noah is definitely still an old person.
Yeah, my
He is.
cane sits by the door right next to my bowl of Werther's hard caramel
Oh
in
my
a skull
God.
bowl.
In the skull bowl,
So,
so
like,
it's hip and cool.
That's true. It is a
I'm
skull.
cool with the
At
kids.
least you have
speaking-
that going for you.
Speaking of old men, though, I went to see this movie in theaters for the first time with my friend Jacob in college. And this was the movie that we went to see together where I didn't get carded for the rated R movie because
Oh.
they thought he was my dad.
Oh no!
Oh.
Real old man hours. What's up?
He was
How
so
did that
upset.
make him feel?
He was so upset. He was like, "Is it because I'm bald?" And I'm like, "I think it's just because you're bald." He was like in his 30s.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Casual Obsession, the horror movie podcast where we talk about horror movies and we keep the dicks coming sometimes.
Not in this one.
As per usual lately, we are continuing the theme of Honk Boy Summer with It Part 1. Here with me today, obviously I'm Emma, and here with me also is Jeff,
Hello.
Nina,
Hi.
and Noah.
Hey.
So, It Part 1 is a movie that perhaps everyone is very familiar for, but in case you aren't, basically it follows a group of children in the small town of Derry, where at the very beginning, one of their brothers dies in a rainstorm, and they all start trying to investigate what happened and what's going on with all these other missing children in the town, when they start realizing there's something sinister afoot. It, a creature that presents itself as a clown, is hunting down children in the neighborhood, killing them and feasting on them. So the kids band together to try to overcome their fears and fight it and kill it. And that's the movie.
That is, in fact, the movie.
There it is.
Can I tell a quick story, or have Noah tell his quick story here, since I think
Absolutely.
it's necessary? Yeah, no, go
Necessary.
ahead.
Okay, so the movie starts. I've watched the movie 2 days in a row. I watched the movie yesterday on the side while I played Cult of the Lamb, which is a blast of a game.
I was watching Piper stream it like a little bit yesterday, and it looks so fun.
It is a good time. But I decided I wanted to watch the movie then, just in case Nina and I didn't get a chance to watch it together. But I wasn't taking any notes. It was just on the side. And then I watched it again this morning with Nina. And I was so used to them calling Pennywise it, toward the end of the movie, that as the movie started, I look over at Nina. I'm like, we need to come up with some sort of name for it, so that we don't have to try, to make it easier to record today. And Nina's like, what? I'm like, yeah, so we don't have to keep saying it the clown. And I was literally about to float, what if we called him like Clarence or something? And Nina's like, you mean like Pennywise? His name? And I'm like, I felt very, very silly because I did not remember what his name was.
Iconic. That's beautiful.
To be fair, if there is anything to be said in your defense there, it is kind of implied that Pennywise isn't actually his name, right? Like he stole it from a clown when he landed on Earth or whatever.
Yeah, but it's still, that is the name.
He's Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
He's
that's
the clown.
his ancestral name.
Yeah, he's
Don't
just a
take that
super
away
clown.
from him.
Of the Pennywise the Dancing Clown line. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
He's seriously adopted and uses it for himself, so it's the one that we will use for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
he's
his
also
We
preferred
respect
name.
his chosen name here.
Yeah.
So, but I just think it's really funny, because I knew you were gonna suggest something like Clarence. I was thinking you were gonna say something like Bob. And I'm like,
No, Bob's my manager. That would be weird. I can't do that.
I thought Bob's your uncle.
Got him.
There we go. Hey Noah, what are the critical reception of this movie so you
Hey,
can get out of
Noah.
this hole you're in? Oh yeah, thanks, Emma. I really appreciate that. I'll answer that question.
What's the
But
critical
yeah,
consensus, Noah?
What do the critics have to say about this movie?
IMDb is a 7.3 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes is an 86. Metacritic is a 69 nice. Letterboxd is a 3.5 out of 5. So a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Nice.
that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable line. I think I was flipping through Google reviews real quick, and I forgot that this movie hit square in the era of the rise of horror movies have to mean something to be good at all, and it can't just be like a scary movie,
Mhm.
because there's people saying that this is the best horror movie of all time,
What?
which it is not. Like
No.
it's a very good movie. I enjoy it. I'll tell you later. But it's not the best horror movie of all time. But it is a very accessible horror movie.
That's true.
Mhm.
And that's my least favorite thing, because there were a couple other movies that came out recently that have been in the same vein. And Nope. Jordan Peele's like entire filmography, is a much more accessible set of horror media for people who aren't into horror. Because Jordan Peele, it's the funny guy. Get Out was like a very funny horror movie still, like his movies are very accessible, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But then you get guys like Adam Tots, who's just like, hey, what are we gonna call Jordan Peele the best horror director of all time? No one's ever had 3 good movies in a row before.
Well, that's true.
And-
Nobody has ever had 3 good movies in a row.
And you know, like
John
Jordan
Carpenter
Peele
fans
himself
do
came
not
in.
interact.
Exactly. John Carpenter fans were in the comments saying, "What about John Carpenter?" And he's
Jordan
like, "I
Peele
think
was
John
in the
Carpenter is
comments
only
saying,
okay."
"What about John Carpenter?"
And you know, to
He
Adam's
literally
credit,
was.
He
Yeah.
literally did.
to Adam's
like,
credit, he did shut up and not interact after that point because what are you gonna do? But you know, like because of stuff like that, this movie was very much the same vibe for 2017. You know,
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad that this movie exists. I'm glad that so many people like it, but man, you do get a lot of annoying reviews where people are like, "This is the best horror movie ever because it has action and adventure and drama and intrigue and a scary clown." It's like, shut the fuck up. That's fine.
I mean,
You can like the
reviewers-
movie, but like it also made big horror fans aggressively low rate the movie to try and balance
Sure,
out the
sure.
people that rated it too
I
high.
mean, like in those people's defense, though, you know what other movie has action, adventure, drama, intrigue, and a killer clown? Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I was gonna say, is it Killer
fuck-
Clowns from
fuck
Outer
I
Space?
thought you were about to say
Fuck
Poltergeist.
you.
Also Poltergeist.
Also Poltergeist.
Scariest shit I've ever seen.
Oh my god.
So,
You're the
so with
worst.
all that out of the way, what's your rating, Noah?
Oh, well, I mean, like, I rate it an 8. I like it. It's a fun movie, you know?
Yeah.
It's not perfect. I remember having a lot of issues with the CG, but I'm
Mhm.
thinking the CG issues that I had are primarily with the second movie because they really went, like, all out with it in that one more so. But this one has a lot more, like, tasteful CG work and was not as bad as I thought it was. So, like, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
very pleased.
Even when
Yeah,
the
it
CG is
came-
obvious in this one, it's still pretty well done and like thematic at least.
Oh, yeah, because you got, like, the flute lady who it's
Yeah.
like, well, yeah.
That's not supposed to look
It
real.
looks like
It's a
CG,
painting.
but she's a
Yeah.
painting. Exactly. So it's like I'll give a lot of that a lot of pass.
Sure.
Because then we see
Mm-hmm.
Pennywise's big tooth maw, and then that looks fine.
That looks really.
It looks
good.
pretty good, yeah.
The deadlight scene is like way better than I remember it being.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I give it an 8. Nina, what about you?
That's a great question. So, a little backstory about me in this movie. This is the third horror movie I ever saw in theaters. The other two were The Visit in 2015. And then I did see Get Out in theaters, which came out in February of the same year that it came out.
Oh, nice.
So I saw that one in a small theater in Waco, and I was one of like 5 people in the theater to see Get Out.
Oof.
I really liked it, and I decided maybe I do like horror movies actually. So it was the third horror movie I saw, and it's very different from the other two.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of things that I got really into the fandom, and there's a lot of things that I remember the fandom saying that like still I kind of agree with, and there's a lot that I don't agree with that I'll talk about later on that I think with the benefit of hindsight are completely untrue. But yeah, it's been a long relationship between me and this movie. So I think now that I have more of an experience with horror, I'm going to give it like a 7 or an 8. At the time I probably would have given it closer to like a 9 or a 10, but
That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Jeff.
I don't think I feel quite comfortable committing to giving it an 8. I'm gonna give it like a 7.5, I think.
Okay.
Because there's stuff in it that bothers me. I do think it's the length is a little bit of an issue, but it does actually need all the time that it takes. Like it's not like it's wasting a lot of time, but it does feel like it drags
Yeah.
a little bit to me.
Mhm.
I can get
So like that
Mhm.
detracts from it a little bit, but overall still very, very good, I would say.
Yeah.
The soundtrack
Sure.
annoys me at several points, but I can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7.5.
There's a couple things that I just think get repetitive because of the length.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
This movie
about
has a
you, though,
special
Emma?
place in my heart. I really enjoyed it. I think which Skarsgård is it?
Bill.
Bill?
Bill.
Bill Skarsgård does a fantastic job.
He kills
as
it. Oh my
Pennywise.
God.
He
Yeah.
And
does.
there-
I love him.
There are parts that are just like of his performance that are just incredibly iconic and I love so much. And yeah, it has a special place in my heart, but I'm going to give it like a 8.5.
Nice.
I really enjoy it. Watching it again last night just reaffirmed how much I enjoy it. And I've seen it like since watching it in the theaters. I've watched it a couple different times, but it's just a fun time.
It's like comfort food, like genuinely. I
Yeah.
like love spending time with these characters. They're really fun.
The group
And
dynamic
I
is
like
just really good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
there are so many scenes where like everyone else is kind of being really serious, and then Eddie and Richie enter the scene together, just absolutely gabbing, and I love them so
Yeah.
much.
Your mom, it's great.
Mhm.
And I really love the genre, I guess you could say, of I'm gonna call it this because of a very specific reason, like the kids on bikes genre.
I knew you were gonna say kids
Where-
on bikes. Yep.
Yeah, where it's just like kids in like the 70s to 90s going around town, and there's something supernatural afoot and they're dealing with it. Like Stranger Things is fucking amazing. This came out a little bit after like
Yeah.
season 2, I think.
I think so.
And so it just kind of really like touched that genre as well and kept that going for me. And I just think it's like really fun, especially when you have good child actors, which
yeah.
both Stranger Things and this movie did a really good job
Mhm.
with.
Mhm.
They're real good.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I love it. It's a good
I
time.
think Stranger Things, it Chapter 1 and Black Phone have now become like the hierarchy of like kids on bikes like movies for me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
love very different things about each one of them, but I love them all so much.
Yeah. With all that out of the way, let's go over some trigger warnings.
Yep.
Noah,
Yeah.
I understand you have
Yeah.
a list.
I do have a list.
Have you checked it twice?
I checked it thrice, in fact.
Oh my god.
So we got a couple of heavy hitters on this one, and I think for the record, most of them aren't heavily represented in here, with the exception of some obvious ones like clowns.
Sure.
A lot of these are just sprinkled throughout, not like super present in the story.
They each
But-
hit really hard once and then never show up again.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
So we got racism, we got dead kids, we got clowns, we got the F slur, we have parental abuse, and we got big pedo vibes.
Yeah.
The parental abuse and pedo vibes unfortunately do happen at the same time in a couple of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Dead kids and clowns, obviously a theme throughout the movie. Oh, you know what? There's some body shaming in there too.
Oh yeah, there
is.
is some
There
body
is.
shaming.
I totally forgot to mention that, but
Yeah.
There's a good deal of it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
Ben
just
is
really-
not treated kindly in this movie.
He's not.
Really intense depictions of bullying, I guess you
Yeah.
could say.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
just that there's a lot of identities represented in the Losers Club, and each one of them gets picked on for that identity.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, it does kind
did-
of seem like the only people who pick on Stan for being Jewish are his friends.
Yeah,
that is true.
yeah. The movie opens up with Richie doing some line about a secret Jew church thing when it's his.
He's
bar
talking about a
mitzvah.
bar mitzvah.
He just has to.
He's
Yeah,
talking about the most well-known Jewish tradition maybe ever.
Yeah, like
So
if he just like riffed on the fact that he has to read in Hebrew out of the Torah, like that's the thing that maybe people don't know about. But he's just talking about the concept of a bar mitzvah, and I think
and
that's
he's getting
very
it
funny because
completely
it's like,
wrong
hey man,
also.
yes.
yeah,
I wonder.
Yeah, again.
Because like
Again.
obviously growing up, I knew what a bar mitzvah was.
Right.
Mhm.
Because of like television and shit.
Yeah.
it was on
But-
Arthur.
It was.
Back in the 80s, is that when this takes place?
Yes, this movie.
Mhm.
Yep.
They might not
Um,
have known.
Yeah, I'm curious if that was in like the societal
Public
subconscious
consciousness.
like it is now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel
that's
like
a really
a bar
interesting
mitzvah is
point.
like simple enough that it seems unlikely that anybody wouldn't know anything about it, but
Well,
but
it's
then
kinda-
that's
it-
me. So
There's a lot of simple concepts.
All
Yeah.
I went to maybe 2 when I was growing up, and
Oh.
then I like quinceañeras are a like concept that a lot of Hispanic like cultures observe.
right.
So like
Mhm.
to me it was the same thing.
Mhm.
In my head it was the same thing. It's not. It like beyond the like coming of age thing.
Right.
But in my head I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's a quinceañera for boys in a different culture. Makes sense. Cool."
Nice.
I always just remember the line from, I can't remember if it was Arthur or if it was like Buster's sideshow where they're like, let's teach you about other cultures.
That was Buster's
But I just remember-
sideshow, I believe. But also
Because I
it
just
was in
remember
Arthur.
for boys it's called a bar mitzvah and for ladies it's called a bat mitzvah. And that's all I know. Thumbs up.
There you go. Hell yeah.
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 Thank you, Arthur,
Correct.
for
But yeah.
teaching me anything.
Every culture you can think to yourself, wow, the Losers Club is pretty diverse. There's a lot of different identities, and then you'll figure out very quickly that
That-
is something that the
that
movie's not
Henry
going to ignore.
Bowers decides to bully them each individually for all of their identities.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But no one knows that Richie is gay yet, so he just kind of calls all of them
Spoilers for
slurs.
the next movie.
Oh
dude.
my God, Nina.
I'm going to be talking about the fact that Richie is gay and the fact that probably wasn't decided until they did the next movie, but it makes sense watching this one
Oh, it really does.
nonetheless. So I will be talking about that. Spoilers for It Chapter 2, Richie is gay.
Well, I want to get into more of this because I actually have something about the intro and regarding chapter 1 and chapter 2
Okay.
that I'd love to talk about. But
Yeah,
first, we've talked a lot about like scary things like clowns, but I got to know, Emma, are clowns scary? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, do you think?
Clowns are pretty scary. So I don't know if this is what you were hinting at, but we're gonna go ahead and move into a segment called Emma's Scary Rating, where
Once
Emma
again, I am
talks
shut
about
down for my
how
ideas.
where Emma talks about how scary a movie is. So first of all, I think if you're scared of clowns, this movie was made to trigger you.
Pretty
Mhm.
much.
Yeah. There are also
Even the normal clown in the movie is creepy as hell.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of fears that this movie hits. Bullying, there's drains,
Mhm.
Drains, yeah.
blood, like disease. There's quite a bit of stuff. It's like it shoots a pretty wide net, but I think clowns is one of the biggest ones.
Whoa. What about
As far as
the greatest
what?
terror of the movie, New Kids on the Block?
Oh, true. Yeah. Also,
Constant
New Kids on the Block.
references.
I think if you're scared of clowns, especially if you're severely scared of clowns, this is going to be like a 10 probably, because this is a very creepy depiction of a clown, and obviously it is a very classic kind of horror clown
Yeah.
that has a lot of lineage to it. But if you're not so scared of clowns, I think this movie does throw the scares at you quite a bit and is intentionally trying to be pretty upfront scary. And I would give it like a 5 or a 6 out of 10.
All
I
right.
think it's pretty creepy.
Yeah. I would agree. It's one of those things where like the fears they decide to play on in this aren't specific things for me. So every now and then I'm like, it's a scary movie, but it's not that scary. But then I
Right.
remember that there are people that are afraid of clowns and I'm just
Right.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that
True.
the parts of this movie that get me are not the parts that are supposed to be scary, but just anything with Georgie and Bill.
Yeah.
All of that stuff really guts me.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's tragic.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that I've got that out of the way,
Yeah.
Yeah.
warning, I'm about to go into our spoiler summary, and then we're gonna be talking about the movie however the fuck we want. So if
Yeah,
you
no
haven't
rules.
seen
Hell yeah,
this
we are.
movie and you want to see this movie, probably stop now. So spoiler summary. Basically, so the movie starts off in Derry. At the very beginning of the movie, you have Georgie and his brother Will. I don't know the characters' names very well, so I'm sorry if I fuck something up. So
Bill. His
Bill,
brother Bill.
yes. So
Here,
Bill-
I'll pull up the IMDb page and just interject with names.
great, thanks. I'm gonna try to do this as non-name specific as possible. So Bill is sick and it's raining outside, and he makes Georgie a little toy paper boat so that he can kind of like put it in the water current and just like follow it around in the rain. While this happens, in a very famous scene, Georgie loses track of the boat. It goes down a drain. He goes to the drain, and in the drain, there's a friendly clown. The clown offers him the boat back, and Georgie goes to take it, and the clown eats his arm and drags him into the sewer. Then, as the movie goes on and progresses, you start seeing that there are a lot of other children missing, and it's this big mystery of like what the fuck is going on, but like none of the adults really seem to care. So the kids all individually start experiencing these creepy happenings around the town, and all of them seem to center around this clown figure. They basically eventually learned that every 27 years, this kind of creature appears that hunts people, and there's this big like tragedy in town, and then it lies dormant again for another 27 years. And they figure out that it's this clown, and this clown's center of operations is this old well that's hiding in this old fucking house. So they all band together, they go to this house to try to confront the clown, and while they're there, Pennywise kind of like splits them up and hunts them down according to their specific fears. And while they're in there, they hurt Pennywise, and in order to retreat, Pennywise slashes one of the kids, and broke another one's arm, and so they have to leave to get medical attention. And Pennywise kind of like slinks down back into the sewers. So they regroup. Then they decide, okay, fuck this. We're not gonna mess with this. But then one of their own, Beverly Marsh, gets taken by Pennywise, and one of them finds a note from Pennywise saying, like, if you try to come get her, you'll die or something.
It was actually, if you try, you die. You know, much
Oh.
more he honk, I'm a clown.
Yeah,
Actually, it
true,
said
thought it was
you
you
die if you try.
Or you die if you try. Fuck. I got gate kept by gatekeeping.
God damn.
Maybe you're gonna gatekeep. Check your facts first.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So-
true gatekeeping is gatekeeping no matter what.
So, Bill is the one that sees this, and so he starts going around, gathering the other kids, saying, "Hey, Bev's been taken. We can't just not do anything anymore. We have to like save her." And so they go back to the house, and their plan is to go in the sewer. Meanwhile, Pennywise has Bev down in the sewers, but she isn't afraid of him anymore, and so he opens up his clown Clussy and shows her the
His
what is
dead
it called?
Lytoses.
His dead Lytoses, also known as the prostate.
I thought it seemed a little bit more like a cloaca, personally.
But this
hate
puts
it.
her into a trance-like state, and the kids get down to the sewers where Pennywise starts kind of like hunting them and getting them to split off from the larger group. But they all band together again, find Bev. One of them kisses her to wake her up, and then they all basically fight Pennywise, and he has to retreat because they beat him up and they're not afraid of him. Then they all band together and swear afterwards that if Pennywise reappears in 27 years, they'll come back to kill it. And that's kind of where the movie ends. And that is a very general summary of the plot. As we talk more in depth about things, we'll kind of explain like what's happening a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the over-under. So who wants to start us off?
All right, so I really want to open this up with
Okay.
the beginning of the movie.
Hell yeah.
A weird spot
Yeah.
to start, but
Crazy.
What? No,
Not
that's
according to-
controversial. I mean, the
So-
beginning is so like
It's good.
is good.
the beginning
I
is
love it.
almost over perfected for the rest of the movie, and I love it so much. They put so much work into this beginning, and I remember I've seen this beginning more times than I've seen the movie because it
Mhm.
played in front of horror movies in theaters, like the full 5-7 minute intro of it would just play after a little like monologue from Stephen King saying, "This is the uncut beginning of my new movie, It. I hope you like it, blah, 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 blah." And I'm very glad they did that because, firstly, it made me interested in checking out the movie more because it was such a clean, good intro.
It is.
Mhm.
But man, I have a lot of good feelings toward it. You know, it's very well done.
Yeah.
That like, and I think Jeff is going to complain about some of this later. But I'm going to bring it in as a good thing. I felt like a lot of this movie was Spielbergy. You know what I mean? With the way the music played, Kids on Bikes is a very big Spielberg theme.
It
Kids
kind
on
of
Bikes
is.
in the Summer, I should say.
A little bit.
And there was just a lot of the orchestral stuff was really fun, but not in a major key way. You know, like minor
Mhm.
key fun orchestral music, which helped, set the tone as well.
Is it
And
minor
that whole
key because
beginning
they're
is
kids?
boo.
I do think this intro scene
was pretty good.
is one of
Totally
the
lost my.
I do think the
I'm
intro
sorry,
scene is
Noah.
one of the parts of the movie that has actual good music in it. Like
Mhm.
when I said the soundtrack annoys me in a bunch of parts, this is not one of them. This is part where it's like actually really, really good.
I'm assuming your issue is the 3 needle drops in the movie.
No, it's I'll talk about it later.
Okay. But yeah, I think that this was the best bit of marketing that this movie possibly could have done. It drummed up so much hype. The
Yeah.
beginning was just so clean and good, which brings me into my point for the second movie, which is I'm so mad that this studio was dumb enough to pick. Okay, so they made it chapter 1
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that with a teaser at the end that chapter 2 was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who knows the story knows that it wasn't going to stop at chapter 1. But they weren't sure if it would do well, so they didn't record the second movie simultaneous to this one. So when we come back in the second movie, all the shots of the kids are using the actors 2 years from the future, 3 years from the future, depending
Oh.
on when
Right.
whenever you filmed everything, And that bums me out so much because there is only most of the characters look fine, but the kid who plays Henry Bowers got jacked in between. Like he hit puberty and stopped being this like skinny little kid with a mullet and became like a whole ass man.
Mm.
And that took me right out of the flashback sequences.
Mm-hmm.
And it just bums me out because there was no way this movie wasn't gonna make money hand over fist. Everyone was excited
Yeah,
about it.
right?
And I wish that they had just filmed the flashback scenes at the same time that they did this movie. They had everything set, everything was ready to go, but they weren't ready to commit to making a second movie till this one made them enough money. And
Yeah.
I wish that they hadn't done that. That was a bit of a
So-
slip up.
From what I read at the time that It Chapter 2 came out, a big part of why they went and retroactively recorded a bunch of the kids scenes is because they hadn't actually planned on having that many flashbacks. It's just that they knew by the time the second movie came out that the kids were a huge hit and that
Right.
everyone loved the kid actors and
Yeah.
everyone thought they had done a great job.
I
So
mean, they
their original plan might have worked if they had just gone to using the adults like it seems was originally the plan.
Yeah.
But they wanted to have more of the kids there because they knew that the audience fucking loved the kid actors. So they
Mhm.
brought those kids back for that reason.
And you needed the flashbacks because otherwise people wouldn't have connected with the new movie.
Sure.
And I understand
Sure.
that. But
Another
I was
thing.
saying they could have connected with it if they'd written it better, but that's just
yeah.
me.
There's always that. Another thing to take into consideration is this movie came out in 2017. It had been in like development since 2009.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
I wonder if maybe a lot of producers, studios, etc., were just kind of wary of putting money into it, lest it do poorly from just taking
Which is
too long to
possible
come
because
together.
this is season 1 Stranger Things. Phil Wolfhard, geez.
That's him.
Wow.
That's him. Phil.
Phil Wolfer.
Fucking hell.
Finn.
But that's yeah.
No,
yeah.
his name's
You
Phil
know what I mean.
now.
Season 1 Finn Wolfhard, and it was released after season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
If you don't mind, I do want
back
to
to
go
this
back.
movie.
For one, I don't want us to talk too much about part 2 since we're also going to cover that.
Right.
But
Also, I
spoiler.
haven't actually
a
watched it
spoiler.
yet.
Oh, really?
never?
I still haven't. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
interesting. But I've only watched it like once, I think. But
Same.
I do want to talk about that intro scene. There's one thing I didn't like about it.
Mhm.
That I always semi cringe at when it comes up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Georgie gets to the drain pipe and the boat goes down. And he's like, "No, my boat."
Mhm.
and then Pennywise shows up. They do this really dumb audio cue for Pennywise in this scene where it's like, "Meow," and then it's like Pennywise's eyes like artificially CGI'd to be brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it just looks kind of dumb. I would have really loved if just Pennywise was suddenly like, or like kind of like popped up out of the drain and was like, "Hiya, Georgie." Rather than like that what they did.
They do that a lot in this movie. That actually brings me to the one thing that takes this movie from like a 9 or a 10 down to like a 7 or an 8 for me.
Oh.
And that is how repetitive the effects that they use on Pennywise are. They always do this janky wobbly thing when he's running. They always do like the zoom, like the what's the word?
Crash zoom.
Yeah, the crash zoom on his face, the like vertigo zoom on his face. They do a lot of this stuff every time, and I think that Bill Skarsgård's like performance didn't need that much enhancement on those scenes specifically.
Yeah.
And they start from the very beginning with that first scene with that, where it's like, I don't know, man, I think he's pretty scary just the way that he is.
Yeah.
It just is very, that specifically, because you have that first scene. The drool is because the tooth prosthetics that Bill Skarsgård was using made him drool all the time, and the director was like, "That's dope as hell. Let's keep it."
It's kind of perfect, honestly.
It works so well,
especially with his facial acting, like.
Oh
right.
yeah.
Just how he said like something about how he doesn't have a whole lot of thought process behind Pennywise's motivation because Pennywise is an animal.
Yeah.
He's
hunting.
very animalistic. Just because he's sentient and he can talk doesn't necessarily mean that he has like a whole lot of thought process.
Right.
And you can see that in his eyes. He is only talking as long as he can get fear out of them, and then he's gonna munch.
Yeah, like I love the way that like anytime Georgie's not looking directly at him, if you look, his eyes are like just unfocusing.
Yeah.
He's not putting an effort into maintaining his human face if he's not being looked at directly.
Yeah, because when Georgie does look at him and he's like focusing on the little kid choir, we got the popcorn smells, it's the circus is in town.
Yeah.
But then he just keeps staring.
Yeah.
He just keeps staring at Georgie. He's like, I'm gonna eat that kid.
Yeah.
And he just like starts to unfocus and his like teeth are like,
and he's drooling more. It's like the longer the conversation.
And then Georgie's like,
I'm
gonna go.
The longer they talk, the more hungry he gets.
It struck me as being like the longer they talk, Pennywise just doesn't know how to maintain a conversation. He doesn't know how people meet each other. I mean, like his best idea to get this kid is to hang out in the goddamn rain sewer and wait for the paper boat to fall into it, so then he can hold it up and be like, "Oh, hey there, buddy, I can help you out if you just come a little bit closer." Like, who thinks of that as a thing? Nobody would. It's because he doesn't know how people work.
He doesn't. That's why, like, he's like, you don't necessarily get popcorn at circuses. He's just throwing shit out there.
Yeah, he was just waiting for Georgie to feed him something that he could use there.
Yeah, he's like, Georgie, interact with me. I'm begging you. I've never had popcorn at it.
Yeah,
that's
how many circuses have you been to?
The popcorn bag is circus colored.
I'll accept that. Okay.
I'll
take that.
I do want to mention something, and I'm sure this is a fun fact that we all know about. But just in case our audience doesn't know, Bill Skarsgård has a lazy eye, and he has to like focus to like keep it semi online. And I love that for Pennywise, he used it of just like to unfocus and let his eye drift.
Yeah,
like. So fucking cool, and I love
it's really
There's
cool.
a photo set that's gotten famous online of Bill Hader in the filming for It Chapter 2, where he went up to Bill Skarsgård in full Pennywise makeup, and he's like, "Hey, dude, I love like in the first movie you were great. I love how they did that thing with the CGI for your eyes. How'd they do that?" And he's like, "Oh, this," and just did it in front of him, and they caught that on camera. Bill's genuine reaction. It's so funny. The way he just like lurches back. Oh, it's so good. And Bill's cracking up.
Actually, I want to talk more about Pennywise, because Pennywise, for having so little screen time, is by far the best part of this, which is insane to say, since these kid actors
they're doing
absolutely
so well.
knock the movie
that's
out
the
of
thing.
park.
He is good enough. He could carry this movie if he had to. but he doesn't
Mhm.
have
But he
to.
doesn't.
And he does, and that's what makes this movie great.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this movie, if everyone wasn't working together on this, it would be one of those, damn, the It reboot kind of sucks, but the guy they got to play the clown, he was
Right.
pretty good.
Which is how people tend to
But
feel about
I-
Tim Curry. They're like, the
Yeah,
movie
well-
sucks, but Tim Curry's great.
Some people do be loving the movie, but I agree.
They are wrong, but
I want to talk about specifically the scene where he unfolds himself from the fridge.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found out what they did with that.
how'd they do that?
Just now. So he was just laying on his back, like head out in the fridge, and they lifted him with wires to get into position.
Mm.
And then they animated his body like unfolding around him, but they hand animated every frame of it, which is why it looks so fucking good.
Oh.
And they
Mhm.
yeah.
animated it backward so that he looks like a spider crawling back in, and that's
Oh,
how he
that's
comes
cool.
out.
It's so good.
Oh,
That's
while
really
watching
I love
it,
motion and movement.
there were a
stuff like
couple
that.
of moments where he does stuff in the movie, or like one of his illusions does stuff. And as I was watching it, I was like, did they make it look wrong by just shooting this backwards or something? Like the scene in the library.
There's a few things.
The scene in the library with like the headless kid walking down the stairs and stuff.
I
when
love
it
how
gets
jittery
to the
it's
bottom of the
almost stop
stairs,
motion.
right? When it
Yes.
gets to the bottom of the stairs and it hits that last couple of steps and strikes that weird like pose with the like toes turned in and shit. I
really like how
am
you moved your
fairly-
head as if it moved its head.
yeah, that's the kind of position it gets into though. It's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did
Yeah.
something with my head for our listeners. I'm
Listeners,
pretty
you know
sure
what's
that they
going on.
shot that thing backwards just to make it look wrong, and I think they maybe like sped the footage up little bits here and there or something.
Oh, they had to. Like that weird shuffle stutter step.
Yeah,
That's a
like-
classic trying to walk backward fast.
Yeah. It's just it looks
Yeah.
so good. And Pennywise does that kind of shit constantly. Yeah, though I love that unfolding out of the refrigerator shot. The way that like
Yeah,
his
it's
entire body
the
is just
best.
like rotating around him and like his head stays facing forward while his torso spins. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so good.
Yeah. I also just love that entire scene for Pennywise.
Yeah.
Where
Mhm.
he's kind of like
He's in his element.
he's in his element. He's really
Mhm.
going ham on that kid. And
Nina referred to
That-
it as playing with his food.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
playing
it.
with his food. And that's one of my I feel like he just does such a fucking good job in that scene. But
Mm-hmm.
it also is a shame, like you were talking about earlier, where I feel like a lot of the scenes Pennywise shows up, there's some like CGI going on or like something happening, and we don't get as many just raw kind of performances where it's just him and like the clown makeup doing his thing. And I think that's partially why I love that scene, is because you really just get that.
Yeah.
And I also really love there's some animation on the face and like at the end of that scene when he gets stabbed through with like
Oh
a,
yeah. And his,
doodad.
like the side of his
But-
mouth starts to open up every time you
Yeah.
cut
Yeah,
back.
his
it's just a
eyes
little
are
more
doing
raw.
weird
Yeah.
shit and yeah.
like that animation is really well done, but
Mhm.
that scene, there are a couple shots where it just shows like his body as the kids are kind of freaking out and he's just standing there and there's like Jewel coming down.
Mhm.
And just the entire like framing of that and how it all plays out is so fucking good.
Yeah.
It's
It
so
is.
because they did just enough practical stuff that when they did a big shot, he's got the big goofy hand claw going on, and he's
Yeah.
just like crooked standing there.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so
And-
good.
That scene is probably the best sequence in the movie. Right?
Okay. This
I
is
have
perfect for
one
me to
other-
pull it out.
Okay, Nina,
I'm
you
happy to
go.
hear more because that one for me, Pennywise coming out and then them coming in, and he's like, "Oh, am I not real enough for you, Bill?
I love
was
that
real
line.
enough for
I love
Georgie."
the way he
That's so good.
delivers it. The way he's like, he sounds like he's legitimately hurt by it almost.
He
It's
does.
like,
Yeah.
is this not
Oh,
real enough for
mm.
you? Like, oh, it's so good. I
Like,
love
"Oh,
the
I'm
way
sorry
he
you don't
delivers
like my murder
all
house.
of his lines. Like, for as little screen time as he gets even fewer speaking lines, and the lines that he gets are so fucking good.
It-
And his delivery of them
Yeah.
is so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, whatever
I have
Nina
a
was about to
couple
say, though.
other I have a
Right.
couple other Pennywise scenes that I love, but I
Yeah.
want to hear what Nina
We'll come
has
back to
say.
it.
Okay. So what I wanted to say is there are some movies that feel like a bunch of smaller scenes stitched together in a bad way.
Yeah.
This
Mhm.
movie feels like a bunch of, I was telling Noah as we were watching it, a bunch of like flash horror vignettes tied together with an overarching villain.
Yeah.
Because of that, Pennywise's presence, even though he as a character doesn't have a ton of screen time, his presence is really felt throughout every little scene that we get. So it's really, I feel like everyone has their own favorite sequence, and it's hard to pick a best one in the movie because I really love Bev and the hair drain. Like that's one of my favorites, like
Oh,
horror
yeah.
Really good.
sequences ever. But I feel like because we have 7 main characters who each have their own individual fears and own individual backstories, it feels like but they're cut together so brilliantly that it doesn't feel like a Suicide Squad thing where we're like introduced to a character, introduced to a character. It
Yeah.
feels like we're getting like just these really intricately woven together plots like of a real friendship with their own real
Right.
traumas.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's never like,
But yeah.
this is the new kid Ben, he's got my back.
Yeah, literally. Literally. They each and I love how
in fairness, when they intro Mike, that's almost how
That
it
is just
But
about
no,
all
but that's
Mike
the thing.
gets. Yeah.
I really love how we have a core friend group already established at the beginning of the movie, but
Right.
it is 4 of 7 people, 3 friends over the course of the rest of the movie get brought into that group and actually form that full friend group. And I love that
Yeah.
because that dynamic is so solid of like, yeah, initially it was these like 4 dudes, but then they run into Ben, and then because Ben and Bev are friends, and Bev and Bill have a history, Bev gets lumped into this friend group, and then they
She's
find
just like Ben from Soch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if Bev hadn't been lumped into that group, she's the one who's like, they're like, should we do something about Mike? And she's like, yes, and
course we're doing
immediately
something.
immediately drops her bike and goes after it. So because of that, like this friend group is formed because of all of them, and I love it. I love them so
Yeah.
much.
They come together really
Yeah.
well.
But Emma, Pennywise scenes
Yeah.
you like?
My favorite Pennywise scene. So obviously the one we talked about, that is
Mhm.
top tier. I love it.
Hmm.
I also, one of my other favorite ones, just because we get such a good look at Pennywise and you really get some creepiness to it, is when the one kid is chased by the leper and afterwards he runs to the back of the house and then
Yeah.
Pennywise
Yeah,
is there with the
Eddie.
balloons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a good scene.
It's good. It's
Like
really
I
good.
fucking love that scene so much.
Yeah.
Shout out to the character actor that isn't Doug Jones. It's Javier Botet. Shout out to
Ah.
him for killing it as the leper.
He did great.
Love his character acting in this one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He apparently he
Um,
worked with this director before on Mama because this guy directed
Oh,
that
okay.
one.
I really
Oh.
want to watch that because I want to see more of Andy Muschietti stuff.
Right? He seems really like I just love it when you can feel like the synergy between a director and a project, even if it's like an adaptation. It seemed like he
Yeah.
was really into making this unique and making it his own.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway.
My other favorite Pennywise scene, and this is just because it's fucking hilarious, is one of the kids is being chased by the bullies, and is getting beaten up in the river, and he kind of looks past the kids, and
Mhm.
in like these tall reeds, Pennywise is just hiding and like staring at him hungrily. And then it kind of cuts to the kid's face and he's looking confused, and it cuts back and Pennywise has like a kid's hand and like waves
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good.
I do love that.
That's
so
one of my
much.
that's one of my favorite gifs ever to use. Is
It's
just
very
Pennywise.
waving armor.
Yeah.
Oh
so
my
good.
god.
You know, I have another Pennywise scene that I really, really love
I've
as
got a
well,
couple more as
actually.
well.
So I love the ending fight scene
Mm-hmm.
because I love the seamless transformation from monster to monster to monster to monster as he goes and attacks each individual kid.
Yeah.
But like just slipped in there are his spider crab legs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Just like real quick, his arms transform. He's like da 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 da, and then he's back to being the painting lady face again.
Yeah.
And the reason I love that scene is not only because he just changes between a bunch of different things to try and specifically scare people,
Mhm.
but also because he keeps changing into a different thing to scare people. And it's like, oh damn, the burning hands. Mike doesn't like that at all, but everyone else is like, that stupid clown's
I don't
doing
give a
something
shit.
again.
I'm gonna
Let's
hit him with
a
this
stick."
thing.
Literally, I was talking with Noah during that scene. It's mom friend override, because that's the whole reason that like a group of people can beat him.
Yeah.
Is that like the other kids don't see, oh wow, burning hands, so scary. They see, oh my god, he's picking on Mike. That's Mike's thing. Mike's afraid of that. Let's beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But honestly, though, there are two things about this end fight that I love. One is the burning hands coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Oh,
creepy
it looks
as
good.
fuck. It looks really good. But also, at the end, when they basically have Pennywise beaten and he has Bill,
Yes.
and he's like holding Bill, and just the way he has like his hand like over Bill's face
Yeah.
and like
Mhm.
clutching him, there's something just so inhuman and
Visceral.
inconsiderate
Oh,
about it,
yeah.
like very
So good.
visceral.
Uh-huh.
And it's just
Mhm.
like, it's not
And
something
desperate.
that really draws its
Yes.
attention to itself.
Right.
It's just like kind of on the side of Pennywise's body as he's like clutching Bill.
Yeah.
And it's so fucking creepy.
Yeah. Also,
Often, oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just gonna say. Also, that's that leads right into one of my favorite things that Pennywise does, which is when he then delivers that like little monologue about like, let me keep him and I'll let all of you go. And he goes into that like he like gets poetic for a second. And I know as he said it, Pennywise would not be trying to be poetic, right? He's just trying to communicate notions from his whatever's
Mhm.
going on in his mind, right? But the way that he phrases and delivers all of this stuff, the way he's like, you will all go out and I will have my long rest and old age will take you into the weeds. And he's got this like accent that I can't place. And I don't know if that's just Bill
Right.
Skarsgård having that or what, but like the way that he just doesn't sound like he's familiar with English as he's saying all of it makes it all come across so much
It-
better.
It's
It's-
exactly how a Lovecraftian being like
Yes.
what Pennywise is
Yeah.
would talk about old age.
yeah.
Because that's
Because
like
that's
a
something that
concept to him
happens
that he
to
doesn't
them
suffer.
and not him. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
It's a
takes
little
his
reminiscent
27-year
of
nap.
the it's reminiscent of the older movies that would have people who don't speak English phonetically read their lines.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
like they'll deliver these like killer reads that like somewhere randomly there's just a weird inflection.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't know why they did that, but man, that's great. And then you find out like 20 years later, looking back at your old favorite movie, oh yeah, that's because Joe Schmo over here didn't actually know how to he
Javier
didn't know how to
Bardem
speak.
Javier
in No
Bardem,
Country for Old
yeah.
Men.
Yeah.
I need you to
Jackie
watch that
Chan
movie
in
with
a
me.
lot of his movies as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that is a little bit like this. Obviously, like this is in a bigger way and it's executed.
So-
It's just such a good
It's
movie,
so
man. I
One
love,
thing-
I love his performance.
One thing I think super contributes to that is the trust that was built between Bill Skarsgård and the kid actors.
Mhm.
Because the way that he's able to get very like not like physical in a weird way, but just like he's able to do those interesting moments where as a villain he is toying with these kids.
Yeah.
Like I think that wouldn't have worked if there wasn't actual trust between those actors.
Yeah.
So
It was
all of the
funny-
kids talked about how at first they were freaked out by him, but he was just a really chill guy to act with.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember watching an interview with Bill Skarsgård where he was talking about it, and I think it was like Jimmy Fallon or somebody was like, "How did the kids react when they first like saw you in the costume and everything?" And he's like, "Well, the first time like I really acted with any of them and I was in full costume was like the fridge scene."
Oh.
And
Jesus.
he was like, I was really worried because I'm like bearing down on this kid, trying to be really freaky and all this stuff. And I was like, this is just a kid. I don't want to like scar him or
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
And so like right when cut happened, I was like, hey, are you okay? Like, is everything fine? And the kid's just like, wow, that was amazing. Like, I love what you're doing with the character. Love it. He was like, these
so
kids are
good.
just total professionals. And
Yeah.
he's like, they're incredible. And so I feel like that translates really well throughout the movie of just these
It does.
kids, like really, because I feel like in the early days of horror movies, like with I think Exorcism and various other things, and I think Poltergeist,
Mhm.
it's more about like tricking the kids into getting the shot you need so that they
Yeah,
don't
the
like
Kubrick
actually
school of
understand what's
directing.
going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The Shining is
Yeah.
definitely what I was
You make your
thinking of.
character seem tormented by tormenting your actor.
Yeah, but like nowadays, as like media has become like this juggernaut, and kids are like really taking acting seriously and everything, and you're getting this generation of child actors that like have this experience, understand what's happening, understand the process, and understand like character really well. um you're seeing more of this kind of surprise from older actors of like, oh, these kids actually fucking get it,
Right.
and they like know, and you don't necessarily have to treat them with like baby gloves the entire time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of contributed to that mutual trust as actors to really deliver like really amazing performances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was really, really good. I don't know. I really love this movie. It's a good
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
To hop back
It's a
to
good
the
time.
effects again real quick, that last
Mhm.
scene with Pennywise where they're all beating the shit out of him. I like how when he we were just talking about the mom friend override thing where everybody's like, if he's working really hard to scare one of them, it doesn't really work on anybody else. I like how the moment that breaks down is when he becomes Bev's
When
dad,
Trent-
and everybody else is like, hey, what's going on here? But Bev has no goddamn hesitation, and she just takes that piece of
Yeah.
like, what is that, like inch thick fucking rebar, and just
Yeah.
jams it down his throat.
Like,
I
why
And
did,
then-
why
just
did he
killed my
think-
dad.
Yeah, she had
Right?
already beat the shit out of her
Yeah,
dad
she did-
moments ago.
She already
I don't
beat
know
the
why
shit
he
out of her
thought
real
that
dad
would
and
work.
maybe killed him, actually.
Oh,
But
definitely
then
killed him.
what I really love about that scene is not just the fact that it's her doing that and not anybody else, but also the way that he then, like, the way that they do the effect is almost like he's like crystallizing back into Pennywise.
Oh yeah.
You know, like you see like little flakes of his face turn back into the clown makeup almost. Like it
Mhm.
looks so fucking good. I love it. That's one of my
It's so
favorite
good.
effect moments from this movie.
It all like genuinely, apart from some of the like jump scare effects that they use that are just again like the typical
Sure.
zoom and the
The
typical
jump scares
whatever.
are all incredibly telegraphed in this one. It really doesn't. I don't
Yeah.
think the movie thinks it's catching you off guard with most of them.
No. I want to talk real quick,
Yeah.
just really quick about the bullies in this movie.
Sure.
Because I've seen the more that we get into like 80s horror nostalgia, the more we see more of these bully characters. Season 2 of Stranger Things already had introduced Billy Hargrove, I think.
Yeah.
And we have what's his face in this movie, and then we have what's his face, Vance in Black Phone, the metalhead kid.
Yeah.
There's just like, it's just a trope that we get to see a lot. And I was talking to Noah in this movie while we were watching this movie. I think it's really interesting that we know that what is this kid's name? Henry Bowers.
I love Henry.
We know that Henry Bowers is this son of a cop. There's definitely some parental abuse there.
Obviously, yeah.
He's not super well off. He's mentally traumatized. And then you look at his friends, and only one of them matches his energy. And if you look at Patrick's clothes, they're a lot nicer than Henry's. He has like red like Doc Martens or something. Like they're really nice
Yeah.
shoes. I noticed when he was running into the sewers. And I love that, like, without knowing any of Patrick's backstory, I get the vibes that he's the kind of like really cruel kid who doesn't have an excuse. The way
Yeah.
like not that Henry has an excuse, but he is a sympathetic character. I can feel for him a little bit in what he's going
Sure,
through.
because you see him being
but-
miserable.
Right, exactly. But then you look at Patrick, and you look at how like well he's dressed, and how like even Henry's kind of like, yo dude, we're not setting this kid on fire. like, I just thought that's really interesting that, like, we don't get to see a ton of the other bully characters. There's some deleted scenes that
Sure.
kind of get into them
There's
more,
more
but
from Patrick, more of Patrick in the book, from what I gather, and he's very heavily telegraphed as being like a Jeffrey Dahmer type.
mhm. I like the costuming in this movie and the thought that they put into a lot of that stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's very, very
Mhm.
fun. All that said, I don't think they got a period accurate Tampax box, so I'm redacting
no,
everything I just said that was
Wow.
nice.
no, those boxes all looked just a tad bit too modern.
Mhm.
Then again, I wasn't buying tampons in the 80s, so what do I know? But
Me neither. Yeah, I wasn't even alive. So
I was. No.
Damn.
I going back to the bullies, I like the scene. I don't remember the exact quote that the main bully's dad said, but like something about seeing like a paper man's true like colors when they're exposed to fear
oh, that's
or
the
something
cop
like that.
dad who says
Yeah,
that.
the
Yeah,
cop dad said that. Yeah. And I feel like
Mhm.
that very much encapsulates the bully, but also Pennywise,
yes, yeah,
as like Pennywise is exposed to fear, and you kind of like really kind of see once all of his power is taken away, like how fearful and kind of pathetic he is.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I liked it.
Yeah. That was something that I was talking to Noah about a little bit was the if like the kids are not like super rational, but I think that they know without ever having to like fully state it out loud that the only reason that Pennywise would offer to take Bill and let the rest of them leave is if he could not take on all of them together.
Yeah, the fact that he's driven to
Um
trying to bargain with them. Yeah.
like yeah, so and I also okay, I might if we do it chapter 2.
If
Um
I thought that was our
If.
next movie.
oh, is it?
Spoiler alert.
Oh, is it
Okay,
our
so
next
maybe I
one,
should
or?
wait to talk about this.
That's
Okay.
what I thought.
Okay, I'll talk about this in the next movie then. Because I want to talk about the power of belief and how it works with Pennywise and how each of the kids just has like one, not each of them, but several of the kids have like one thing that they really believe is going to work and so it does.
Mm,
Um versus the adults have this convoluted thing that has to have this whole backstory to work and then one thing goes wrong, you know? I think the difference between the fact that the kids were able to beat him so easily and it took the adults so much more effort is like
they complicated it
really
for
interesting and
themselves.
fun.
That's kind of interesting.
They
Yeah.
complicated it for themselves. Because adults need so much more. Huh?
Jeff hasn't seen
Okay.
it yet.
Yeah, I haven't
Adults,
seen it.
yeah, adults are so much more. They need more to take. Kids will take something for what you present it to be.
Right.
But adults need proof.
Yeah.
And I think that when we watch chapter 2, that'll be really fun to compare like what it takes for these adults to be brought back into the situation.
Right.
I'm
Whereas
gonna say
kids.
something because I'm gonna say something real quick because I'm worried I'll forget
Yeah.
it by the time we record chapter 2. But I think there's a really interesting conversation you can have around how childhood trauma affects adults
Oh,
and
definitely.
how
Mm,
difficult
mhm.
it is to overcome. Whereas as a kid, overcoming your fear is a bit more simplistic and one tracked.
Mm.
But yeah,
That's
Jeff,
a
what
really
were
Yeah.
you
good point
saying?
too.
Well, I was just gonna say, kids are so direct in dealing with their problems. They'll see a clown and just beat the shit out of him because, like, why wouldn't that work?
Yeah, right. Literally. The other thing I really love, and Richie is my favorite character. He's a lot of people's favorite characters. For me, it goes like Richie, Ben, Eddie, and then everyone else. Um,
I don't love
and
Richie as a character, but I love what he brings to the group dynamic because of the way that he's like so constantly cracking jokes and nobody ever laughs, not even once.
and
Mhm.
he
I
just
love
keeps
that.
going.
I love
I
that.
love him, but the moment that makes me love Richie as a character in this movie, like I love how abrasive he is. I love how he's
Yeah.
the first one to give up at any given moment.
Mhm.
Um, I really, really love when Ben wakes Beverly up, the first person to go for that group hug is Richie.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's so sweet. He just like goes in for both of them and everyone else kind of comes in after. He's such an abrasive kid, but he really, really cares. And I love Richie. He's so good. And his friendship with Eddie, the fact that like
Yeah.
all that Pennywise ever does for people is fake stuff and dead stuff. So he'll do like clowns in the painting, and he'll do the kids that he's already killed. But when it comes time to scare Richie, Richie said it was clowns. But what gets him
Yeah.
is Eddie. And
Yeah.
I love that so much. It's the first time we see him use each other against themselves is for Richie and Eddie.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's just a really fun movie. There's
It's a
lot of
really fun movie.
themes
There's
in
a
Yeah.
it.
lot of heart to it, and I love that.
I'm
Is
gonna
it time
I'm
for?
I'm gonna talk about the
No, go ahead.
soundtrack here.
Mhm.
There
Oh
are
yeah,
a
I
lot of
really
want to hear
moments
that.
where
No
I
time
really
yet.
like it, even if it's a decision that I don't really understand. Like in the cleaning all the blood out of the bathroom scene, the way that they just start playing Six Different Ways by The Cure for some reason. I feel like that's
Yeah,
an odd song choice,
gotta
but I
have a
am kind
montage
of
song.
into it.
yeah. The thing is, I was telling Noah this, like watching this back with the benefit of hindsight and having watched a lot of other horror movies
Yeah,
since then. Again, this was my third horror movie ever. It's a lot more tonally consistent than I thought it was when I first watched
a
it.
little bit.
Um, like it felt like really out of nowhere, but now having watched it like 3 times and watched the second one, and like it's been 5 years, going back and watching it is just like, oh yeah, no, this is a whole movie. Like
hmm
it really is. But
Yeah.
at the time, yeah, that decision seemed really whack.
Yeah. At the same time, though, there are other decisions that I think definitely do seem very strange. Like the rock fight scene. The whole tone of that scene feels kind of out of place for the rest of the movie, and I don't like the song that they're playing there. It makes it feel
I
like
agree.
the movie is trying to make that scene seem cool, because like that's what you
It's like
use that kind of
like
music for. But
mm,
like, and I don't like that. Also, there are so many moments where like, yeah, what's going on in the movie is like, it's kind of reaching an emotional thing or whatever, but like the soundtrack is just telling you how to feel about it so hard. It kind of took me out of it. Like it felt like it was I don't know. I don't quite know how to phrase this. I think the more like orchestral soundtrack of this movie lots of times feels too
Too much.
Hallmark
Okay.
mm,
a little
Okay.
bit, and I checked out the guy who did the music for this movie and other movies that he has done. Spoilers, it's not a lot of horror movies. It's largely like I would call them like Oscar bait type movies
oh,
largely. So it's
mm-hmm.
like, oh, of course, that's that. If that's what he's used to scoring,
That's
that's
where
what
we
this
get
shit sounds like. So
my Spielbergy vibe
yeah,
music.
yeah, that's where you get a lot of that stuff. And I really don't like that. I mean, I've talked before about how I don't particularly like soundtracks that are always telling you what to feel, but then like, what else is the function of a soundtrack? So that's not a good criticism for me to have, right? But it's not
I see.
the
I
right
liked it.
kind of atmospheric establishment, I guess, for me. I don't
I
know.
liked it because it established it it established the these are kids having a summer vacation together
Yeah.
vibe,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Sure.
really helped nail that in, because I think that was a part that with too much of a creepy soundtrack or something like that, we might have lost the element of these are all kids having a
Sure.
summer
And
together.
I'm not suggesting that the whole soundtrack should have been creepier or anything. Like, every
Mhm.
movie can't be The Black Coat's Daughter or Sinister or whatever I want. But
Mhm.
like, I feel like there are just too many moments in this movie where the soundtrack is like, all right, it's time to feel things now. I don't know.
That's fair. I also felt like there were some moments that were like kind of doing the James Bond thing where they had like really like impactful music over a very mundane scene. Like there were a couple moments that were not that exciting that they had like a really heavy like action
Hmm.
like score going over.
Yeah.
That I noticed it just like 1 or 2 times. I
You know
don't think it's
what?
enough to like just obviously destroy the movie for me, but
I wonder if maybe that's why I feel like the movie drags a little bit. Is that the tone is just too consistent. It doesn't properly have any like lulls in it.
it really doesn't. Like I said, it's a bunch of like flash fiction tied together, so
Yeah.
there's not really any downtime apart from the quarry scene.
If it would have been
That is like the only downtime.
yeah,
that we
I feel
get.
like if this movie had been like serialized in like 10,
Oh, a
15-minute
miniseries?
episodes. Like, it's just all the little, like
like
you're
like the
describing, the
original ones.
vignettes just here and there,
Mm-hmm.
all
I don't
patched
know that
together.
that
I
would have
feel like
worked
that
for me,
could have been
but
all.
yeah,
That could have been
But
kind of neat.
that's
I'm
what
not
the other
suggesting
thing
that would be
was.
better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that would be better at all. But I
I was
do
gonna
feel
say,
like
we
it would
already got
work
that.
pretty well.
potentially, yeah. And that's the thing about the book was cut between. I haven't read through the whole book. I started
Right.
reading it. I hate Stephen King.
Fair enough.
I had the exact same experience. I started reading it and I was like, I hate this.
My mom
I have
loves
read a
Stephen
couple
King, but I don't know which books were her favorites other than Pet
Yeah.
Sematary.
I have read 3 Stephen King books. I read The Shining, I read The Stand, and then I read one more that for the life of me I don't remember what it was. And, I'm never I'll die not knowing.
Was
but
it The Night Flyer?
no,
That's one a lot of people
I'm
forget
like
about.
remembering snippets, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But I started it. I did not enjoy it, but it cuts back and forth between the kids and the adults.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of where this like flash fiction idea kind of comes from, where it's like, oh,
Right.
like this scene, that scene, this scene, that scene kind of a thing.
Yeah, it has to be
But
in
I
a
don't know.
series of isolated scenes, more or less, because
Right. So, I don't know. I'm never gonna finish reading it because I know what happens, and I don't. I think I like the things that they did with the movie better than they did
right,
with the
right.
book.
You know, and
On that note,
and
I would like to posit the idea that if anyone aggressively states that they think that the book is better than the movie, that's a little weird, right?
That's
Yeah.
Like that is
very weird.
potentially a red flag.
Yeah.
Well, the one person that I actually knew in my personal life who said that kind of thing was the guy that I saw it in theaters with, and I no longer
Oh,
talk to
no.
him since him being in
Oh,
prison,
no.
and
Oh.
I don't
I would love
suspect
to
it to
hear
be
about this when we're
unrelated.
not recording.
So,
Yeah, you know what?
Oh.
Actually, though, that's
Um,
horrific.
yeah.
That sucks.
I think I would love in 2040 when we get a reboot of it.
Right.
I would love to see a and this isn't a spoiler, but I would love to see a version where they do adapt it where you get cuts between the adult's story and the kid's story
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
kind of plays off of each other
Yeah.
because I think it's pretty universally agreed that the adult story is not as
Sucks.
good.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Mhm.
But I think you could, if you like kind of play them back and forth, and it would maybe have to be a television format,
Yeah, maybe like a
of
Midnight
like
Mass
a
kind of thing.
6 episode thing, but having it play back and forth between the two stories, and kind of like experiencing it that way, I think would make the adult story a lot better.
Yeah.
Again,
But doing what they've been
yeah.
doing and having like the children's story is like a part 1 and then the adult story is like a part 2 like they did with the television series and then this.
The television
I
series
think-
was intercut. No, the television
was
series
it?
did go back and forth.
Was
yeah,
it?
Mhm.
the mini
Oh, I
series.
didn't know
So
that.
what
The
you
one
just
with Tim
described
Curry?
is exactly what the Tim Curry one was. It was a mini series that cut back and forth between them.
That's not the way it
Except
was when
it
I
was
watched
done.
it.
Guarantee it was.
What?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't
I
think
have
it was. But...
watched it as recently as 2020 because we had
Whoa,
it
okay.
on at work because it's technically PG-13 enough to put on in a DVD shop. And I had forgotten that that's how it was. So I would look up and it would be the adult scenes sometimes. And I'm like, wow, we're further into this than I thought we were. And then I remembered that that's how it is.
Huh.
So
Well, in that case, I would love to see a more modern
yeah,
yeah,
me
just
too.
better
Since-
executed.
TV productions are like a much bigger thing now
Yeah.
than they were
Right.
back then.
They're much more and at the time, like the only miniseries that I like can really remember people talking about horror wise were all like Stephen King adaptations because the Langoliers got one too.
Mm.
Mhm.
And it was basically like it did fine, but after that it was like, oh, you have a D-list like Stephen King story that you want to adapt, let's do a miniseries.
And that's what he likes
so-
anyway, so
Yeah, so I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to see like a modern adaptation.
Yeah.
But we've already got a modern adaptation that I think is too soon. So I think we'll be sitting with this one until like 27 years from now or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I
Ironically
said,
enough.
2040.
Mm-hmm.
Which it does bring us to a fun fact. Wasn't it 27 years between the TV series
Ooh,
yeah.
releasing and
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause wasn't it
1990 to 2017, yeah.
That's so
Pretty
funny. I
neat.
love that.
Actually, do you want to
It's
hear
it's great
something
timing.
kind of interesting? The whole like killer clown scare that happened right before this movie came out in 2016.
mhm.
We all remember that, right?
I remember that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
Oh wait, no. Yes, I do remember
Okay,
that, but
so-
you should mention it for the audience.
So back in 2016, there was a killer clown scare. If you don't remember that, you're too young to be listening to this podcast. Anyways, so
Let me give a little background
Um,
on that too. There was nothing that happened. It was just some people being creepy in clown masks.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
and I
it
think people
floated
got
around
stabbed.
the internet.
I believe the
I think-
reason
yeah,
that it
but it
stopped
wasn't
is that a
like
guy
a
in a clown
thing
suit
thing.
got shot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because some people decided to keep going with the prank because there was no central movement. It
Right.
was just someone took off on Facebook and then some other people dressed up in clown suits to try and scare people, and then a guy got shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
pretty much.
Okay, so
Facebook scares. I
that's
tell you.
not the only time that has happened. Previously, that
Did it happen
happened.
27 years ago?
It happens in America just about every 30 years,
That's so
consistently.
funny.
The previous time that it happened before 2016 was in the 80s, and a lot of people, when they think back on it, they say that it was because of Stephen King releasing It, but Stephen King hadn't put it out at the time. The Killer Clown Scare inspired Stephen King to write It.
Oh my god.
Uh-huh.
That I
And I
love
believe
that.
at that time
That's
it
so
was because of like John Wayne Gacy becoming more public knowledge and stuff or something like that. But regardless of the reason, it had happened 30 years before that as well, I'm pretty certain. Like this is something that happens kind of consistently for one reason or another.
That's really interesting. I wonder why that is.
It's really weird, right? Yeah. I'd like to just talk about a couple of little details that I like in this movie. Anytime that
Yeah,
there is a
absolutely.
TV on in any
It's the
scene,
same
Yes.
show.
it is the same show, and it is sewer clown propaganda.
It is sewer
Yeah.
clown
It's
It's some
propaganda.
lady talking to a bunch of kids about how it's fun to go down in the sewers and meet new clown friends. Like, what the fuck?
I love it because I didn't register that it was on in every TV. I'm just like, it's weird
Every
that Henry's
time.
dad is watching this,
Yeah.
but whatever. And then I realized it was on in the background of like Bev's dad was watching it, and I'm
See,
like,
it's
Uh-huh.
always the parents. Bev's
Yeah.
dad, Eddie's mom, and fucking Henry's dad.
none of these
which
kids-
is really interesting.
None of these kids actually watch the TV. It's only ever the parents. Isn't that interesting?
And it's always a show. And I wonder if that plays into the fact that none of them acknowledge this shit.
hmm Oh, definitely.
I
yeah.
actually, my theory around that as well is Pennywise aside, this is such small town shit. Like
oh, absolutely.
when Ben's
Mhm.
like, yeah, 6 times the national average of like kids going missing here.
And nobody talks about it.
And then, and no one talks about it. You know, as soon as that's been going on for like a few years, parents are like, hey, you know how it is living here in Derry.
yeah, they want to just
the
sweep it under the
scenes
rug.
are great,
not
but
talk
man,
about it.
every now and then, you know, but yeah, no one wants to talk about tragedies like
Sure.
that, so you don't talk about
Well,
it.
and it even
keeps
gets
happening.
to like Bill's dad yelling at him about how Georgie is gone. He's dead. He's not coming back. Get it out of your head. Stop thinking about it. Like
Yeah, no,
he
it's
won't even
for
let
all-
his
well,
son
not Bev's
fucking
dad as
grieve
much.
for his brother.
Yeah, so like that, and then Eddie's mom trying to keep him on like house arrest
Uh-huh.
because like, oh, you're too sickly, you know, doing her
Right,
thing,
yeah.
making him think that he was too sickly to go out, so that try to keep him safe. And then Henry's dad being like, you have to toughen up for what's out there, so that whatever's like in the world can't get ya.
Mike's dad.
Mike's, yes.
No.
Or Mike's
No,
grandpa.
Henry's
rather.
dad. Specific.
Does
Henry's
Henry's
dad
dad
is
doesn't
what I
do
was
that.
thinking
Henry's
of.
dad just shoots
Henry's-
his gun
no,
at him and
because he
and says,
yeah,
"You
because he's like,
suck."
you're a little bitch. You're never gonna survive out there because you're a paper man.
yeah.
You know, like, and then yeah, also Mike's dad being like,
Mike's
you're either
grandfather.
or Mike's grandfather being you're either a predator or you're cattle, and you got to know, or you got to be the predator so that you don't find out one day that you're cattle.
Yeah.
You know, I like that. Like all the parents.
They're all doing the same
Because I include
things,
Henry's dad
kind of.
too, because
Right.
he's doing the same thing, but in a in a heavy-handed abuse way,
Right, in a distinctly different,
not in
and
any way that
very
actually
wrong.
does anything.
Yeah, and they're all doing things in a very wrong way, obviously, but like some are more wrong than others.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really fun to see all the parents reacting similarly.
Right.
Not Stan's dad though. Stan's dad's just like, you're gonna
He's
make
just
me
like,
look like
you are a
bad
bad
rabbi.
Jew and you're making me look like a bad rabbi. Go put that book back in my creepy office with my creepy painting.
I love that.
have
It's
Why
like,
does
I
he
see
have
your-
that creepy
Okay,
painting in his
you wanna-
office?
Do you want to hear something fun about that painting that I happen to know?
Yeah.
I would love to.
That's based on a real painting or a real series of paintings by an
Mhm.
actual painter that Andy Muschietti, the director, was scared by as a child. His dad
Oh,
had a
oh my
painting in his
God.
office of a lady with a fucked up looking face, and it scared the shit out of him every time he was in there. So when he started making
I
this
found
movie
that
about
series
things
of
that scare
paintings.
kids, he was like, well, I know what
Yeah.
I'm putting in this.
Good for
I'm
him.
putting in the thing
was
that
a good-
scares me.
It's the funny thing is, you can tell that it's pulled from a real childhood fear because it's the most realistic of the childhood
Right.
fears.
And of everything
Everyone
that
else has
happens in
these-
this movies, at the time that I saw it as an adult, that was the one thing that actually stuck with me for a significant period of time after watching it.
Yeah. Weird painting in a dingy office. And it's like, oh shoot, yeah,
Like,
I
oh,
get
shit,
that. That makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And I hate pictures of
Part of
people that
mirrors-
have
like
like
mirrors
the
in the
fucked
dark.
up face like that. Like that just creeps me out severely.
Mhm.
Part in the sewer where the painted lady is like
Sucking on his
has
face.
the mouth
Uh-huh.
on like his face. That's fucking creepy.
Yeah.
That's fucking creepy. I love it.
Right? It's so
Oh,
well
it's so
done.
good.
Ugh. I never want to see her again, but like she's so well done.
She
Mhm.
is.
You wouldn't take her on a second date?
I wouldn't have gone on a first date, I don't think. Speaking of just little group dynamic things with the cast here, the one scene where they're all talking about the things that Pennywise scared them with, and Stan describes that, and Richie's just like, "Oh, is she hot?" The way that Stan looks at him and just goes, "No, Richie, she's not hot." I loved his
Yeah.
delivery of that line so much.
Stan is such an
Apparently a lot
underrated
of-
character.
Really, yeah.
a lot
Also,
of the banter between those two is improvised.
Oh no, between Eddie and Richie.
Well,
Not
I'm
Stan.
sure
I
that
wouldn't be
all-
surprised
yeah.
if more of it was even, but like I love the scene where they're
Honestly.
getting ready to go help Mike, and when they go, everybody just like drops their bikes on the ground and runs, and Stan is the one
Except
left
Stan.
standing behind, like using his kickstand. I loved
That'd be
that.
I'm a big fan of Eddie's like, can you go get my like supplies or whatever to patch up Ben? They're in my second fanny pack. And Stan's just like, why do you have two fanny packs?
It's every now and then Stan delivers this like scathing line.
This absolute deadpan, like, why are you guys like this line?
Oh,
And I
Oh my
love him
God.
for
it's
it.
so good.
It's hilarious.
What does it feel like to be the actually only sane member of this group, Stan?
Right? Like he's the one brain cell of the group, and he uses that brain cell most of the time just to be like surprised by the rest of them.
Genuinely. Because you know, Ben and Mike are also pretty stable.
Sure.
But
But they're
you know-
also like, we're gonna go and do stuff now.
right,
They're very
right.
like
they want to
action
take action.
oriented. Like,
And people frame Stan as a coward. I don't think that he.
no, he's just thinking
I
about things. He's trying
really
his
don't.
best to make good decisions.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, when Stan says, "I hate you all," I really believe he means it though.
Yeah.
Like that is something that's like, I think Stan is the one who, out of all of them, shouldn't have been there and didn't want to be there. And you know, I really believe that was a huge blow to his friendship.
Hmm.
Everyone else
Mm.
seems to have bonded over it. I think Stan came away from that being like, I
Like,
would
what the
not
fuck
care
was
if I
any
never
of
saw these
this?
fuckers again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I just
True,
need to
true,
get
true.
away from all of this.
Actually, fun fact, that was just the actor hating everybody there. And he said that to them like in kind of like the final scenes, and then decided to use
He didn't
it.
even know the cameras were on.
Mhm.
He didn't even know the cameras were on.
All right, have I ever told y'all that like my dream is to someday when I get my act together enough, I really want to make just a sequence of images like the fun Marvel movie fact. Did you know that actually Robert Downey Jr. improvised every single thing that Tony Stark as Iron Man did? You know, like those type of like trivia things where it's like, I don't believe that this trivia is true. I just simply cannot believe this is true. I want to do that, but like blatant lies about whatever interests I have.
Mm.
That'd be really funny.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought you were going to say, once I have my life together and everything, I really just want to go to my different social groups like you all and say, I hate all of you.
Yeah, that's my plan.
Noah's
that's my big
entering his Joker art.
plan. I'm the Joker, baby.
I'm the Joker, baby. Let's read. Are we ready to read Noah's notes?
Let's read the Joker
Can I
journal.
just talk about one more little detail?
You
No,
may.
please.
In Ben's library scene, when he's flipping through the book and the page is turning, but it's not turning, and it's just like zooming in on the
Yeah.
picture. Number one,
Mhm.
really cool, well executed scene. Number two, did you notice the teleporting librarian behind him?
Yeah.
No,
In one
what?
shot, he is flipping through the book, and she is standing near another woman who's reading something at a different table. And then in the immediate next shot, she is not standing in that spot anymore. She is sitting far, like by herself on the like distant corner of the room.
Mhm.
And that's when we see like the red balloon moving through the library and guiding Ben into the basement. And I just thought that was kind of a
Well, you
neat thing to
also-
indicate to you that like what you're seeing isn't actually real necessarily. I thought that was neat.
You also see in the background of that scene the librarian looking at him very fucking creepily.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it's Pennywise.
Hmm.
Let me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up the scene and link it for you all.
Please do.
But Noah's notes.
Yeah, Noah's notes.
Noah's notes. Okay. Noah says, diegetic piano intro. Let's go.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
the piano in the opening scene
Hell
is the
yeah.
only time we see Mike's mom, and she's playing the piano.
We never see her face.
No, I think we do.
I think
but
in the
it's,
piano scene.
yeah,
we
in
do,
the
but then
piano
after
scene, you just
that-
kind of do a little bit.
I thought I saw the. I
You
distinctly
never
remember
get-
seeing her
You
in
never get a
profile.
good look at her face. I may be wrong in
No.
saying this so confidently, but I am pretty sure.
I'm looking it up.
Okay.
You're gonna have to watch the scene.
It's too much work right now, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
right
it doesn't
now.
make sense to
But
do it
I'm
right at
very
this moment.
certain.
I am almost 100% certain.
Yeah.
Piano intro. What
the
else?
piano piece is cool. It's interesting.
It
The
is.
way it keeps like doing that like emotional like tone shift is really neat. I wonder what kind of
Mhm.
like if it's written in a weird scale or something.
I
think that kinda
was
thing's
thinking
cool.
it. One thing coming back to this movie, this is the same for me in all of my comfort movies, but one thing about coming back to this movie is remembering how well laid out all of the locations are.
Mm.
I feel like I have a really good idea of what every location they go to, of what its layout is. The basement scene, the basement scene, Bill's garage, the sewers, the house, the crack house, like all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be able to read your notes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Okay. So we have Noah says fucking clotheslined. That is in reference to the fact that Georgie misses the first
Oh my God.
blockade, and then
Yeah.
Have you seen the remix where
Yes.
it's that scene and he's running and then hits the thing and then it's I don't remember the name of the song, but it's like, that's my shit.
Oh,
the
yeah.
gas."
All the back girl.
So
It's so fucking
So this is a
funny.
good
Mhm.
opportunity for me to really quickly touch base on the fandom for this movie.
Oh no.
Because like Noah said, a lot of this fandom was not necessarily horror fans, and a lot of them were horror fans who were expecting something different. And I saw a lot of people talk about how the fact that he knocks his head on the second one, like they were like, that's the moment that ruined the movie for me. Like literally, I saw several people being like, "Oh, it's like the slapstick is so cringy. Like, why
That-
it's supposed to be like."
Does anyone know who Stephen King is? The cringiest slapstick man on planet
Does
Earth?
anyone know what fucking
Yeah.
slapstick is? That's not a shot that's played for laughs. It's a kid hitting his head and falling down. If you think that's a joke, there's something wrong with you.
That was a lot of that. What I saw. That I saw some people talking about some other scenes later on in the movie. The blood scene for one. Like the one where they're cleaning the montage, and I like get some of it, but a lot of it was like I've watched a lot of horror movies now. I don't know if you guys knew this.
What?
And I
Huh?
don't think that anything that this movie does that might be a little tonally dissonant makes it any worse than a lot of these fucking movies I've seen.
No.
Like, we just watched Sinister and The Purge. There's so much shit in there that I just do not like very much, and I think is really stupid. That is like miles more stupid than this.
Yeah.
So much cringy dialogue, so many
Oh,
scenes that are just poorly built up to, so many cringy jump scares. And you're really gonna come into this movie and complain about a kid hitting his head on this like barricade?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's
That's a
so
really
annoying to me.
stupid
The fandom
criticism.
was atrocious for this film. Boo boo boo. Noah says, I love these kids. I used to hate them when I first saw the movie, but I think it's because I didn't think it was realistic. Turns out it's just because I was raised sheltered. Lamau. Valid and also a mood. If you are around kids even a little bit, like I work at a coffee shop and sometimes kids will come in.
Sure.
Kids are wild. They
Mhm.
just say stuff.
Yo.
And the way that they act with each other when they're unsupervised, hilarious. So like, yeah, they all think they're so adult and it's like, wow, you are not.
Yeah. Oof.
Noah says, I love Henry Bowers in this movie. I'd love to get a director's cut where we have more scenes with him that were talked about. Yeah, there's a couple deleted scenes. There's one where Henry killed his friends, which I think you can gather that he still did in this
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was like an actual scene where he was outside Neibolt House with his dead friends in his car.
And he was like talking to them and shit.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
they were telling him what to do
Well, that could have been
Right.
because,
That could have
Pennywise.
been pretty neat. Also, the scene where
Noah-
he shows up to the house and he's all like covered in blood. Did you notice the way that the blood is spattered on his face? It's like smeared up toward his eyes like Pennywise's makeup.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I love that, actually. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Noah says, first he mentions the stop motion movement of the headless boy, and then the immediate next note is egg boy.
Egg boy.
Egg boy. Noah gets mad about the fact that this is another fandom thing. People love to theorize that the old people in the car that ignored Ben when he was getting bullied on the side of the bridge, people love to theorize that was Pennywise. I don't think that's true. I think Pennywise was using the fear that Ben felt in that moment at being ignored to just be like, haha, bitch.
Yeah, I would
You're
say
powerless and I'm here.
Yeah, I thought that was more just tying into
Isn't-
the small town stuff that Noah was talking about. Like they see it, but they're not going
Right.
to recognize it because that would mean actually addressing that there's something wrong with their town.
Right.
I thought there was some lore that because of Pennywise, it affected adults.
It does.
To
Yeah,
be, like,
Yeah.
more cruel and stuff.
They
And I
get
thought it
more
was
into that in the next movie as well. Yeah, but some people legitimately thought that the old people were like it was Pennywise again.
And there is that red balloon in the back of the car, so I see how you get that impression, but I don't think that's what that's supposed to indicate.
Yeah.
Right, no. We've talked about a lot of this again. Noah says Pennywise slides around like a fucking slug so often. That is
He
true.
does.
Pennywise in the book has got like a lot of spider imagery, I remember.
Mhm.
But like I love how they don't latch on to one specific creature. He has tentacles later in the movie when he's at one point during the fight.
Yeah.
Like they don't pick a
Mhm.
single creature for him, and I like that a lot
Yeah.
more. Nothing disappoints me more than when because it's like, oh, what is everyone afraid of? Spiders. No, that's not true.
No.
That's such a basic take.
Clowns?
So
No.
when you're when you're doing like a Lovecraftian monster, I think it's important to like go kind of crazy and not pick one thing that it looks like. So I like
Right.
that they didn't do that in this. The slug stuff, the like slipping, sliding, slurping around, the way that his face moves, it's also interesting. I love it.
Mhm.
Um
Yeah, he's just a wiggly boy. It's almost like his body just doesn't have rules. And because
No,
he's not
exactly.
human. Of course he doesn't have human
He's not
body
human.
rules,
He
but, like,
changes just slightly. His
Yeah.
face will like warp a little
Yeah, it'll
bit.
just
His
do
body will be
something
too
fucked
long
up.
or
Yeah.
too small,
Yeah.
too short. Like he is just like the best approximation of a clown.
Yeah, or like anytime he opens his mouth to do something, the first thing that happens is that like his teeth start reaching out of his mouth before his jaw
Yeah,
really
his-
opens fully.
yeah. He doesn't. He doesn't know how jaws work
No,
either.
or like
so
he's
just
just
kinda like,
he's not
"What?"
bothering to try mimicking something real with that. He's just trying to get a chomping appendage together. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
true.
almost like it's a pity we haven't covered The Thing yet on this podcast because like it's a lot like
I've
the way
never
that
watched The
thing is
Thing.
portrayed in that movie.
We'll have to watch the thing.
We have to.
Yeah,
It's so
I
good.
agree. Noah says, nothing like a little fear to make a paper man crumble, but all that Henry's dad did was flip him so hard that Pennywise was able to use him to go after everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, no, sorry. That did not just make your kid more afraid. You actually snapped him and now he's going to kill you. So good job,
Yeah.
It's
Mr.
like
Powers.
it's like in old RPGs where you could actually get such a high negative level that it would flip and become the highest possible positive level because you
Mm.
hit the floor and then tried to keep going.
Yeah, the old nuclear Gandhi from whichever Civ game that was. That kind of thing.
Noah says, I love the dirt in the knife box so much. Just hammering home. Yeah, you know where this was, but it's back now just for you. Yeah, Pennywise really just scooped up all the dirt with the knife and just stuck it in the box and was like, there it is. Oh, remember you lost it in the woods? I
Ooh.
found it in the woods.
Can I say something related to the Henry Pennywise dynamic that I just
Yeah.
remembered that
Oh,
I was
yeah.
thinking
Let's go.
about while watching the movie? When Henry opened the mailbox and there was like the box cutter in there,
Yeah.
I was like, this is very much like a warlock and their patron relationship, and the box cutter is Eldritch Blast.
Yeah,
That's a neat comparison. That's kind of funny.
I do love that. That's funny.
I love that. I love the different like ways that you can. I'd love to. I was thinking a couple times like, oh, this is kind of like a D&D game. Throughout the movie, but that's just all kids on bikes like genre movies for the most part. A lot of them are really like that.
There's a whole system called
There's
Kids
a whole
on
system
Bikes.
based on it specifically because they are so formulaic and have so many like tropes, which is what the classes
Right.
are called in the Kids on Bikes game. It's really fun. Kudos to whoever decided to do that.
Oh, are the character types in Kids on Bikes kind of like the archetypes in Monster of the Week, sort of?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like
neat.
jock or like the nerd or like the wannabe, all of that
Okay.
stuff.
That's cool.
It's really fun. We have another holy shit Richie's glasses. There's no way Finn could actually see
Oh
in
my
those.
god, there is no way he could see shit through those things. They look like the
Size had to be
glasses my
like
mom
10
used to
times
wear
their
back in the
size.
80s.
Mm-hmm.
Noah says the painting lady looks so good in the shadows. This movie knows that its CG isn't the greatest, so it tries not to highlight it too much where you can see it. All the stuff they do on Pennywise is fantastic, but the rest is only okay. Yeah, they really focus mostly
Yeah.
on Pennywise. They knew who the
Yeah.
star of the show was.
Which
And
is
that's fine.
with
That's
me.
all right.
I'd rather that Pennywise looked great and the painting lady looked okay
Well, yeah.
than
'Cause she-
Pennywise looking eh.
Yeah, she doesn't need to look super good. She's a painting. She can look like something that doesn't exist in the real world because she doesn't.
Right. And I love that.
Yeah.
Noah says they hold on Georgie's dead body just long enough to make you wonder if somehow there was a world which Georgie survived with one arm in the sewers for a whole year.
Oh, is that how long it
Very
was? A year?
Well, Henry made some comment about
Yeah, you got a free ride this year because of your brother, or
which I assume that it was only a few months,
Right.
but
yeah, that's something I
Yeah,
was wondering
it's
partway
really
through the
hard.
movie. I was just like, if they're still searching for Georgie and they think he might potentially be okay, how long has it been?
It's been
Mhm.
long enough that a couple other kids have also gone missing at
Right,
this point.
yeah, which apparently doesn't take very long, but
That is true. He just kind of jumps from one to one.
like they
Noah says Pennywise.
Oh, I was just about to say they give us a pretty definite couple of weeks time scale on Betty Ripsum,
Right.
but they don't say anything,
Mm-hmm.
any numbers for Georgie.
Mhm.
No, they don't. Noah says Pennywise's only way of winning is really just pretending to die and then falling down a hole into the next level of his lair. He does a really good job of pretending to die.
Yeah,
I am pretty sure that all of that like face flaking off stuff was for show so that the kids would really think that he was like dead.
could be.
Because he does that when Bill shoots him in the head with the bolt, but it's not reloaded, so it doesn't work.
yeah.
He does like the whole like flaking off thing, and then he's like, "Ha, nice try, kid."
Yeah. Oh, something else that I
Um,
love about Pennywise. Every time that he gets hurt, or when he gets stabbed or impaled or just hit real hard, if he's bleeding, yeah, that's exactly it. Nina just did a thing with her hand indicating what I was about to say. His blood always like floats instead of running in any normal way.
It's such a cool fucking
Yeah,
effect.
it looks
It
so
is.
cool. I love
I
that
love
just
a
as
lot of the
as a
effects.
touch.
a lot of the concepts that are just like just lightly like in the background, not really focused on just the
Yeah.
ways that certain things move, like the kids floating and the way that they're suspended and
Mhm.
just the composition of those
Yeah.
shots, the way that Bev floats,
Yeah.
the way that she moves when they touch her while she's floating,
Mhm.
just like there's so much thought that goes into things that like again, not to go back to Sinister, but like there was not a lot of thought put into those things. And
Right.
it really is the little things that bring a concept up from okay, yeah, scary lives in images guy
Mhm.
to the absolute mythos and lore that surrounds Pennywise by the time that we get to the end of it.
Yeah, it's like it's like in like you see in a couple of like different Dracula adaptations where it's like there's just a ton of small touches put in that aren't lingered on or drawn attention to or anything just to indicate to you that like something about this thing is just wrong.
Yeah.
Like he
It's
doesn't
just
fit here.
just off.
You know, like in Dracula, the way that like his shadow doesn't follow his movements perfectly. And he like uncorks a bottle of wine and like it drips, but it drips toward the ceiling instead of toward the floor for some reason. Like that kind of thing is
Mhm.
also what they're doing with
Yeah.
Pennywise here. It's just a ton of little visual touches that you got to pay
Little
attention to pick up
things.
on, but like it's all there just to show
it's
you that
so
there's
cool.
something weird. I love it.
This like yeah, this is not just a dude clown or some
Yeah.
kind of magician thing. This is otherworldly.
Yeah.
Something about this creature is just not from this
Yeah.
planet.
And when they get down to that like main room in his lair in the sewers, that like pile of clothes in the middle, I thought that was a pile of corpses at first, but then I looked closer. No corpses in there. It's just clothes. There are no corpses left
It's
when he's done
garbage.
feeding.
It's his little dragon horde.
Uh-huh. Well, it's
Yeah,
not even
I
a
love that
horde.
'cause
It's
there's,
just
like-
leftover. It's just stuff that he wouldn't bother eating.
Well, it's all the stuff that also washes down through the sewers.
Also,
you know,
yeah.
it's everything collects down
piled
at the
up.
bottom. It's because there's junk in there too.
Yeah.
There's wagon parts. There's baseball bats.
Yeah, just whatever.
and clothes.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
But like when putting a scene like that together, putting a set like that together, rather, for, as the lair of the monster that eats the children, it would be really tempting to put a bunch of corpses and body parts in there. And they just didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just other shit.
Yeah,
I like
Yeah,
that. I like
I
that
love,
a
good
lot.
I
choice.
love the thought of like what kind of shit would be down there. Like
Uh-huh.
again, it's like the mask from Black Phone. It's like people thought
Yeah.
like about like the history of this town and the history that we know has happened in this town from the very beginning, and that's like just really cool that they kept that consistent. They didn't forget about
Yeah.
it, and I really appreciate that. I just like a little thought goes a long way. Like, is
Right.
it that hard? You're making a movie. You're spending millions of dollars. Like, just think about it, please.
You would think, right? Looking at
All right,
you, Scott Derrickson.
Scott Derrickson, love ya. Love your movies.
Let-
Sinister, please.
Work with other people,
I'm
though.
begging
Like you got to keep working with other people. You did great with Black Phone because of Tom Savini.
Mm-hmm. I love it though. Okay. On that note, next week or next time,
Next
Yeah.
time is It Chapter
Chapter
2.
2.
Honk Boy
Streaming on
Summer
HBO Max for anyone
continues.
interested. Honk Boy Summer.
Honk Boy Summer.
Honk Boy
I'm
Summer will never
excited.
end.
We'll get some returning face from Black Phone and from Sinister with our friend who played Max in Black Phone and Detective So and So in Sinister.
Oh, that
He
guy.
plays grown-up Eddie.
Cool.
Yeah, it's amazing casting.
It's Ethan Hawke.
he and Jack Grazer's face like expressions, the way they use their eyebrows is so similar that it makes for like incredible casting.
Cool.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited to talk about that one because there's stuff that I would like to talk about this movie that will make more sense once we see that one.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, well, Noah, where can we find you?
You can find me as Bubba the Bad, BUBBADABAD, on Twitch, Twitter, and Insta. I'm going to be trying to stream a little more this week and next week and everything because Cult of the Lamb is very fun. And I want to share that with everyone. So, we'll see about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Poggers.
Poggers.
Jack, where can we
Poggers.
find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Bubba Wubbadab.
Poggers.
Poggers.
Nina, where can we find you?
Hi, I'm Nina. You can find me at House Usher Rises on Twitter for my horror stuff, or you can find me at Nina Wolverina on Twitter for my regular art stuff. I wrote a book. It's a dark fantasy with some horror elements. I'm really proud of it and I really love it. And I'm working on a trilogy, of which this will be the first one. You can find that through the link in my bio on Twitter, which will also get you to just all my info, all my other social links. So Yeah, I finally made a card. Be proud of me. And
Poggers.
Emma.
Where are you, Emma?
Hi, I'm Emma, also known as Emma Panada. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Emma Panada. On Twitch, we have a couple of D&D games going. And on Twitter, I largely shitpost and troll my friends. I'm also writing on a TTRPG called All the Witches. You can find information about that at allthewitches_. Our Kickstarter is October 16th, and I'm
Woo!
starting to release weekly videos about different game mechanics and kind of the world that it's in and everything. So you should check those
Poggers.
out. You can find all the links and everything on the Twitter.
Poggers.
But thanks so much, everybody. We really appreciate you hanging out with us and listening. We look forward to talking about It Chapter 2, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.